Hey everyone, let's wrap up February. February has been rather strange. I know I did a lot of things, I read a lot of good books and everything, but it's mostly a blur. So let's look at the videos I uploaded. I uploaded a video where we're talking about big books because this year I want to read more big books and I was stuck in 2 big books, so I talked about them and my experiences and thoughts around that. Thank you for the nice discussions we had there. It was really a lot of fun talking to you about big books and how you deal with that. I also uploaded a weekend reading vlog where I talked about a few books that I had finished and started, and there's also been a letter to February. Thank you all very much for being so kind in those comments and sharing your thoughts. Now let's get into the books. One of the big books I read was in physical form and it was Little. This book is really big, and if I had read the synopsis for the book more careful, I probably wouldn't have picked it up. As you know, I never read synopses, but this book is more historical fiction, and I don't enjoy reading historical fiction particularly, especially if I don't know the details about the history that is referred to. Also, since I didn't know it was historical fiction, I didn't know that the person we were following is a real person and who that person is. It becomes clear towards the end, but it's said nowhere in the synopsis or anything, so I'm not going to tell you. So what is this book about? This book is set in around the French Revolution, and it follows a young woman or girl becoming a woman, Little. And she is born in Switzerland, then her mother disappears and her father disappears, and she goes with her then master, the caretaker that she lives with, to France because of reasons. And then in France they are very impoverished. They meet a landlord lady thing that rents rooms to them and then influences their lives a lot. I'm trying to be very vague because I don't know if it's a spoiler to know who the person is this book is about. But overall, I enjoyed the writing. The writing is from the woman or girl's perspective, and it's very detailed around the first 30 or something years of her life, the events before and leading up to the French Revolution and the things happening during the French Revolution, and then the last part is afterwards, summing up where we finally know who we're talking about and what is happening there. And I enjoyed all the detailed part of her growing up, moving to France and the events happening there, learning about the girl and the people she meets and the way she sees the world. It's always more focused on their private life than the political parts around it, but it's seeping in, and I really like that part. But there were a lot of names and places that were mentioned that connected to them where I was like, is this real or is this not real? And that's when I looked up and figured out that it is historical fiction with more connections to history than to fiction. So I got confused. But overall, I really enjoyed the book. I love the cover, and it's a very interesting take on what happened and about the person that it is about. Let's continue with reading and finish on listening. So the next book I read was the last book in the I Went on an Adventure and All I Got Was This Barbarian Orc series. It's the 5th and final book that was, I think, rather cut short to fit the 100-page mark that she aimed for in all of the editions of the novels, and it was okay. The reductions were mostly on only having one sexual encounter instead of more. But that's okay. The story ended rather interestingly, fun. Well, I really liked the sum up, and overall I'm quite happy with the series. If you haven't heard me talk about this series before, it's a short novella series. The books are around 100 pages long. We follow a band of adventurers who solve a problem that the world is kind of taken over by an evil miasma or something. Something's in the air that is making women attack their husbands or men, and so they need to try and find out what happened. The story is told alternatingly by the orc and the necromancer, who are the main romance couple of this adventure, and it's just fun to follow them. They also said that it is akin to a tabletop roleplay, and that's true. You can feel how they stumble from adventure to adventure to adventure, and I really enjoyed the characters, the mix of diverse characters and the interactions they had. It is clear on romance and explicit sexual encounters, so you need to be aware of that if that is not something you're into. But overall, I really like the characters and the focus on family and being accepted for who you are and the adventure parts. So it was a fun, fast-paced series to read. The next book, I had a sample on my Kindle and I didn't know where it came from, so I thought I'd give it a go, and it started off really well. Land of Milk and Honey tells the story of a cook who finds herself in the Land of Milk and Honey after an apocalyptic event. So the earth has been covered by some kind of smog blocking out the sun, so crops don't grow and everything is sparse and gray and depressing. Then the cook finds a job offering for a restaurant chef in the Land of Milk and Honey, which is a high mountain in Italy where there is still sun, and it's owned by some rich people, and the people who live there and go to the restaurant are rich, and that all, it starts off very confusing. You get more and more information as you go, but you're a little confused as to what's going on, what is the point of this story. And in the beginning, that is really interesting and captivating, and it keeps you reading. But as the book progressed, we learned more about the cook, which I really enjoyed. We learned or saw her work on the mountain in the restaurant with the struggles she had, and she also had to overcome that due to years living in small country and flavorless food, she lost her appetite, and there was also another reason why she lost her appetite, and how she gains that again, how she finds pleasure again, and all these things are interesting, but the overall story is a little bit confusing. So what was nice in the beginning, that you didn't really know what was going on and everything was hinted at and vague, it got annoying at some point that you never really got, this is happening, this is what is happening, or this is what is going to happen. And then the event happens, and then the book doesn't end. But the last part I find very tedious, and even though we get more information about what happened before, we get more explanations, it is rather boring and less interesting. So overall, I think the idea and the plot of the story, the overall thing that it wants to do, is rather interesting, but the writing is a little bit tedious at times, and it becomes annoying the more it goes on, if that makes sense. Then I wanted to read something fast-paced, and I thought I'll continue in my dive in the light novels that I started recently, and my research said that Spice and Wolf is a popular and go-to light novel that is highest recommended on when you want to get into light novels. So I read the first in the Spice and Wolf series, which is a series following a traveling merchant who picked up a wolf god, or the god of wheat or something, the harvest. It's a girl with wolf ears and a tail because it's a wolf in human form, and they meet and they travel together and they have an adventure. I liked it. It was a lot less fast-paced than I expected, but it was an interesting start to the series. I'm interested in the characters, and I will continue with the series, although I managed to start something with 24 books, so might take a while. I was very happy to see that, contrary to the other light novels that I read, which were 8 books but 1 story, this one story had really, in book 1, it was a finished story. So I'm not compelled to immediately continue with book 2, and hopefully not to all 24, because I got 1 story for 1 book, and now I can take a break and read something else, which I liked. But yeah, we'll see how that goes. Moving on to audiobooks. The long audiobook that I also talked in the Big Books vlog about is Rumo, which is, I think, the 3rd or the 4th book in the Samonia series by Walter Moers. And the first one is the Captain Blue Bear book. And I found his writing tedious in the 2 books that I read in physical form, and I somehow find it the same in audiobook form. The audiobook was 25 hours long, and it was well performed by Dirk Bach, but it always feels that there's just too much, too many characters, too many stories, too many plot lines, that it just feels tedious. There's too many things happening without you really moving forward. I think that's part of the writing, and even though it's not bad, I find it tedious to read. So switching to audiobook definitely helped. Rumo is another character that we already met in the first book, The 13 and a Half Lives of Captain Blue Bear. And now we get his life story. So we get his background, how he was born, how he grew up, and years after, and things happening there. And like I said, there's a lot of things happening. It's hard to summarize exactly without leaving things out. But overall, I'm enjoying the series, but it's a little bit tedious to get through. But I think I'll be sticking to audiobooks for the future. The next audiobook I listened to was a classic, And the Hippos Were Boiled in Their Tanks. This is a book I haven't heard about, and it was basically recommended to me and part of the members catalog, so I thought, why not? And it really was interesting. I was dragged into the story, the narration was well done, and I was captivated by the things that were going on. The story is alternating between two friends telling the story of some time in New York that they spent before they wanted to travel and go abroad. We learn a lot about New York at that time in the late 40s and them being part of the scene and being broke as usual. It's by Kerouac, so you can imagine what kind of story you're getting. And it's all about how one of them kills one of their friends. And I didn't know that this was based on a real story. There is a huge afterword to it, and I was very glad that it was an afterword that explained the coming together of the book, the details of the characters, who's who, and what exactly happened, and how much of it is real and how much of it is fiction. And I enjoyed that. I didn't know that. I do like Jack Kerouac's writing. I discovered that listening to it is much more fun to me than reading it, but also I like the times and listening to the beatnik generation and what they were up to. And this is basically before all of them were famous. So I can recommend it. It was a nice, quick audiobook, and with the afterword, this was very informative about some background that I didn't know. You probably know if you studied them more than I did. And then I jumped down the rabbit hole of The Wayward Children. I've always thought this series isn't for me. I don't know why, I don't remember, but the way the people talked about the series in the beginning, I discarded it as might not be what I was looking for at that time, definitely. And now I was looking for shorter audiobooks, something lighthearted, nothing too serious, because February was February and I was overwhelmed with a lot of things, and I didn't want to listen to something too serious and too time consuming and too difficult. And this was perfect. So I listened to 5 books in the series already. Like I said, they are shorter, so all of the audiobooks are around 4 hours long, and I can speed them up to 1.5 speed. So I'm getting through them rather fast, and they're very captivating. I've noticed that the odd books are about the school and starting from the school to go on adventures, and the even books are more traveling to a world and following the children. That's what I always thought this series was about, following children through doors and seeing what happens in the worlds. But that's not what it is. The first book is at the school for the Wayward Children, and we meet a lot of children who have traveled abroad, or rather through doors, to fantasy worlds and fairy tales and different worlds, and the whole idea and the concept of the worlds and how they are connected and the doors is explained. Then in the second book we follow characters, or rather we learn about the background of 2 of the characters that we met in the first book. In the third book we go traveling and start from the school but need to go on an adventure and things like that. And I do enjoy the books. I think they're fast-paced, they're captivating. I like some of the characters more than the others. The first book turns out to be more of a murder mystery, whereas the rest of the series seems to be filling out everything and expanding on what the first book started. So I'm enjoying it. I don't understand the hype. I do understand that it's queer characters, that you have a lot of focus on not fitting and finding a place that feels like home and being accepted for who you are. All of that is rather good, but I find them enjoyable, but not super perfect like you might think from the hype that's around the series. But definitely going to continue with the series, and now my battery is flashing, so let's wrap this up. That was all I listened to or read in February. Let me know in comments how your February reading was. I think I am quite happy with what I've read, with how much I've read, and I'm looking forward to expanding on different things in March. Let's see how that is going. Currently, I'm a little bit slow, so we'll see. Thank you for watching and have a lovely day. Bye-bye.